Welcome to the Clinical Pharmacist podcast, where we discuss interesting topics related to clinical pharmacists in general practice. I'm your host, Runa Salim. I'm the clinical lead of CPS and the training and development manager of Clinical Pharmacist Academy. We also have our co-host, Mahmud.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mahmud Yusupov. I'm a clinical pharmacist, independent prescriber, the founder of Clinical Pharmacist Solutions.
We have with us today a clinical pharmacist who started their journey in this role exactly 12 months ago today. So we have Sundeep Gill. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Sundeep Gill, clinical pharmacist, working currently as a PCN pharmacist here in East London.
Lovely, excellent. Thank you for joining us. Really excited to have you with us. So Sundeep, if you can tell us a little bit more about yourself, what was your personal journey as a pharmacist?
Yeah, so I've been qualified for 21 years. 21 years this summer. I have been working for all that time with a very well-known multiple. And I had a really, really good experience with them. Most of my background with them is in management. I did a lot of pharmacy management, retail management, and training with them. And as I came towards the end of my career with them, I had my daughter, who's now 4, and I decided that I wanted to do something different and I wanted to go back to my clinical roots. So I did the advanced practitioner course with them, and I really enjoyed that. Found that I just wanted to keep learning and found so many different courses that I did, and eventually found that I couldn't put all of the things that I was learning into practice. So my final few months with them were a bit frustrating and, got a bit bored. And then along came you guys. You appeared in an ad on my LinkedIn.
Okay.
And the ad just said, come and find out about being a GP pharmacist. And that was exactly 12 months ago.
Oh,
and
wow.
Now here I am.
I see. So all of that was while you were with that big multiple. Is it true that you were an area manager for them as well?
Yeah, I did a little bit of area managing in Essex and spent a bit of time up in Scotland as well, which is really, really good and interesting experience. And lots of personal development that I did with them. And all of that has really been helpful and useful to me in the last year that I've been doing the clinical pharmacy role.
Wow. Okay. So I think it's fair to say that you've developed, quite well in that previous, you managed to reach the area manager role, which is quite impressive. So, and you said it's the clinical aspect that you were missing, which is why you transitioned over to, clinical pharmacy.
I spent so much time doing management. I just felt like I'd neglected the clinical side of things for a while. And when Ariana was born, I decided that I wanted to just take a bit of a step back and, get back into the clinical side of things, get back to the reason that I did pharmacy in the first place.
So tell us a little bit about the specific journey when it came to, transitioning into the clinical pharmacist role. I know you said that, you saw our ad on LinkedIn. Tell us a little bit more about that. What is it that you went into that started this journey for you?
So I suppose it all started probably about 9 to 10 months before that. I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, which some of you guys will have heard of.
Yes, of course.
He is this high energy strategist who runs seminars all over the world. And I found myself attending one out of the blue. I was invited along by my sister-in-law.
Okay.
And during this whole weekend that I attended, you get to sit down and you do lots of goal setting and, really sort of like do some navel gazing and find out what it is that you want in life. And I decided that what I really wanted to do was I wanted to help people. I wanted to help people with their health. And I wanted to be involved in a bigger way than what I currently was in community pharmacy. In community pharmacy, you don't always get the time that you want with a patient. So, it's real snippets of time. Whereas what I wanted was, like a consultation, like a good 20 minutes, sit down, let's find out, what's going on with the patient and, what we can do to support them and help them with whatever health outcomes they want. So that was my goal. Yeah. And from that, I started looking at different things that I could get involved in. I looked at health coaching and I looked at lots of different courses that I could do. And then New Year's Eve came along, started looking at my resolutions and thinking, right, what am I going to do? Right, this year I'm really going to go after, the clinical side of things. And I want to go after working in a GP practice and, getting anything to do with these consultations that I want with patients. And LinkedIn's one of those apps I don't tend to go on very often, but this particular 3rd of January, I think it was, at 9 o'clock in the evening, there I was, and I just came across your ad. And I'll tell you the reason that I stopped on it was because the location was literally around the corner from my house.
Wow.
I was like, I can't believe
Can I just say, I've never heard this story. I'm getting goosebumps on my arms.
Oh my God. It was literally, I suppose some people would call it grace, some people call it kismet. It was around the corner from my house. It was exactly what I was looking for. All I wanted was, how do I move in from community into GP practice? And that's exactly what the advert said. And I thought, you know what, I can't give this opportunity a miss. I've got to go. So that weekend, I came along to the course. I met you and Mahmud, and there's a few other people there who I'd come across in my area manager days and area pharmacy manager days and things. So it was a nice few hours to spend with everyone, and started to understand what sort of things you need to look at when you're doing repeat authorizations, and a bit of a realization of what actually goes on in a GP surgery when when you make your repeat requests to them, what's the actual background work that happens, and also what should happen and isn't happening. And then a few days after that, literally, I think 4 days after that, you guys had offered me a job, and that was it.
Yeah, I remember. I think we were so impressed with your enthusiasm and just the fact that you were so keen to learn. So that, that was clear to us. I remember Mahmud and I speaking afterwards, and we mentioned your name. So, at the first opportunity when a job opportunity came up, we thought, I think Sundeep, we need to offer Sundeep something. And, luckily you agreed. So yeah, that was lovely.
It's very hard to get, even though I wanted to scream yes down the phone. I was like, no, give me a bit of time to think about it. My husband, as soon as you put the phone down, I was like, oh my God.
So I think that story that you spoke of was quite profound. And the course that you attended was the clinical pharmacist conversion program, wasn't it? Which was the full day workshop. And we had basically designed it as if it was your, first day in a GP surgery. And that was the idea of it, just to give, pharmacists that hands-on experience in a role where they would most likely be starting off as if, as soon as they transition into this role. Obviously, this was pre-COVID times, wasn't it, Sundeep? And now we've and we've now converted everything online, so that is available online.
I would thoroughly recommend it if it's something that whether you've decided to make the move or you're still umming and ahhing about it. I would definitely recommend to do that course, because it just opens your eyes to the starting point.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Now you've been a clinical pharmacist in GP surgeries for 12 months. Can you tell us more about how you progressed to your clinical pharmacist role? What did you start with and what are you doing now?
Yes, if I describe my first day to you, so like I said, 12 months ago, literally to the week, I was started with repeat authorizations. And then what you do when you're authorizing repeats is basically the repeat prescription that comes from the patient or the pharmacy. You're making sure that all of the medications that are on that repeat list are still appropriate. The dosages and the strengths are still appropriate. You're making sure that medications on there that require drug monitoring, they're all up to date. And if they're not, you don't authorize it. You're making sure that the patient has had follow-ups and reviews as required. And you're going through the SPCs, you're going through the BNF, you're going through local formularies and local guidelines. And when you're not used to it, it can take a long time. And I remember there was another pharmacist who also started at the same sort of time, and she was so much faster than I was. And, I was like, oh my God, I must be really thick. I don't know anything. And then it transpired that when the work was checked at the end of the day, because obviously we're newbies and, someone's going to go over what we've done, it transpired that she hadn't been doing the checks and that
all the checks
authorizing. And, so she was getting through the work faster. But at the end of the day, we've got to make sure that our work is of quality. And the whole reason that we can do this role is because a doctor is authorizing us to make these decisions on their behalf. So if we're not doing it right, then obviously, that's a big issue.
Yeah.
So, I think on that first day, I did 5 or 10 reauthorizations.
Yeah, but you
and,
did them all right,
over
though, didn't you?
a whole day. I remember going home with a big headache thinking, what on earth have I done?
With experience, you just get faster, don't you?
And that's probably like the entry level of the clinical pharmacist work that you would do.
Yes.
And then since starting the PCN role, I've been involved in a lot of audits, a lot of work with the impact and investment fund that the GP surgeries have to deliver for the CCG.
Okay.
But also the prescribing incentive fund as well, a lot of auditing for that. It's particularly around gastrotoxicity drugs, NSAIDs, antiplatelets, anticoagulants, finding those patients who haven't got PPI protection and are at risk, and then making sure that they've got that PPI if they need it, and reviewing them as well. Once they've got, you don't just give it to them and that's it. Going back, a month or so later, are they happy? Do they still want to carry on taking it? So that's a lot of the work I've been doing. And then now started doing the structured medications reviews, which is really, really interesting work. I'm lucky to be using a system called Eclipse, which we've got down here in London. And with that, the system highlights your high risk SMR patients.
Yeah.
So I'm basically starting with all of those. So all of these people are really, really complicated patients. They're on lots and lots of different medications, lots of anticholinergic burden going on, lots of opioids and benzos and Z drugs, and it's really interesting, really, really interesting.
So it sounds like you're quite heavily involved in the clinical side of things. So you're probably using a lot of your clinical knowledge and learning a lot new.
I'm learning so much, so much. So anything that you sort of come across that you've not done before, you just go and learn it. And if you learn it properly and well, then that's it. You only need to touch it once and then you know exactly what you need to do.
So that's your current role, Sundeep. How would you say that your managerial experience has helped you in your role, or has it helped you?
I would say that it has definitely helped me in terms of, because the PCN pharmacist role is such a new role, there isn't really any set criteria as to what exactly a PCN pharmacist should be doing. There's a lot of, you can be doing structured medication reviews, you could be doing triaging. Every surgery uses pharmacists differently. So I think for me, my management and leadership experience has helped me structure my day and structure what I want to deliver. So, most of us will probably be used to our boss telling us exactly what they want done and when that deadline will be. Whereas I found that a lot of GPs don't have very much experience with a pharmacist. They don't really know what we're capable of doing. Some of them do. Some of them have worked with pharmacists within their practice before the PCN role came along, so they're very aware, but others didn't. And it was very much that I was left to my own devices. And I found that if I didn't have the experience that I had, I probably would have been quite lost, and probably would have taken me a lot longer to find my feet. Whereas my experience allowed me to come up with a plan, which I knew exactly how to share that with my key stakeholders, basically, all the GPs that I was working with, and made sure that they understood what I was going to deliver. They had the opportunity to ask questions or to amend it if they felt they wanted to. And then once we got agreement, I ran with it. And I also found that to ensure that they could see that I was delivering, I found that if I did the smaller tasks first, like the auditing, wrapped it up in a nice report and sent that to them on a regular basis, they knew what I was doing. And so, there wasn't any worry there of, is our PCN pharmacist actually doing anything? Are they delivering anything? Are they of value? So there's a bit of, how do you influence your key stakeholders and how do you impact on them so that they know that you are of use to them? It's a brand new role. And I know, 20 years ago when I first started, God, I sound so old, but you were lucky if the GP picked up the phone to you because you couldn't read their handwritten prescription, and things have changed so much. To have these opportunities within a GP surgery, it's amazing. And now they're talking about, increasing funding to increase the number of allied health professionals within the PCN. It's such a huge opportunity for pharmacy, the pharmacy community to just show what we can do and how useful we are.
Yeah, I think it's becoming more evident that pharmacists in general practice, they are key members of the general practice team. And also, I think it's really interesting the fact that it's actually your managerial experience that helped you in your PCN role, because it's the transition from, for example, area manager to clinical pharmacist in general practice. It's not that typical transition that we normally see or expect. A lot of people might think that, I need a very strong clinical background. I need to, for example, have worked in a hospital or have a couple of diplomas under my belt, clinical diplomas, but it's not always the case. So it just shows how you can use any skill set or any experience to your advantage in the sector.
Absolutely. I would definitely say that, if you are willing to learn and you're willing to put in the time and effort to ensure that your practice is getting stronger and stronger, it doesn't matter what background you come from. You will, someone who's got a clinical diploma might know, you will have more experience in the other area, and then you both learn from each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And eventually you both come to the same place. But I think it's all down to the individual. You don't rely on the clinical director or another senior pharmacist giving you guidance. You need to know what you want to achieve and how you're going to achieve it, and within what timelines. And you've got to give yourself these goals and make sure that you're doing whatever it takes to achieve them.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely what I would say, is that don't expect anyone within the PCN to support you. If you're lucky enough to find someone who will hold your hand, then great. But today, January 2021, everyone is so busy. You've got the COVID vaccinations rolling out as we speak. No one's got time to hold your hand. You've got to be confident enough to do it for yourself. Yeah,
absolutely. I really agree with that, because within this role, there's so much room for progression. We've got the CPS pathway, levels 1 to 4. You could become an independent prescriber, running your own clinic. You can do all sorts. So I think you're absolutely right in the sense that you have to take responsibility for your own progression. As long as you're motivated and willing to learn, there's training available out there, and you just need to seek it.
Definitely. And one of the other things I've been involved in is I was asked to help out at the COVID vaccination hub back in the beginning of December when the Pfizer vaccination was first authorized. And that was an amazing experience. That's probably the highlight of my year, actually, being asked to do that. It was so amazing. You were working within, it was a different PCN to the one I'm working in, but working within that PCN team with all the doctors, the nurses, the reception staff, the social and well-being coaches, and everybody who worked within that PCN. They were all so lovely, and they were also just wanting to get these vaccinations into the arms of the vulnerable that were coming in, and all these patients were coming in and they were so happy. And it was I really felt like I was doing a good thing, and they've asked me to come back again as well, so this time around, hopefully I'll get to vaccinate some people too. Again, I wouldn't have had this opportunity if I hadn't have left the community pharmacy role that I was in, and to be part of something so huge. It's amazing.
That's fantastic. And it's lovely to hear that you were able to achieve that fulfillment in that role as well. So that's really nice.
Sandeep, looking back at your journey, is there anything you would do differently?
The only thing that I would do differently, and this is a personal development thing of mine anyway, is my confidence. I think everybody has self-limiting beliefs, and I think because it was so new, and I think I allowed my confidence to dip, and I should have, and I feel like if I had just been a little bit bolder and made more decisions on my own, maybe I would have learnt faster rather than asking so many questions.
But I mean, when I think about, from a patient safety perspective, I think, because you were so new to the role initially, I think it's better to err on the side of caution, isn't it? Because, I mean, you're confident now, but it's probably because of the experience. Although you may have had a lot of that knowledge, being able to apply it practically is completely different, isn't it? Theory is always different to practice.
Absolutely.
So I think that's, for me, I look at that as a positive for you. The fact that you're more cautious, you double check, you seek advice from more senior clinicians. I think that's a good thing. And what's even better is the fact that you can see that you're more confident now. So I'll turn that around and see that as a positive, to be honest.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing because, they say if you're feeling uncomfortable, then you're learning. You're on your edge of your learning zone.
Exactly.
So that's got to be
exactly. Yeah, no change happens when you're just doing the same thing day in, day out, right?
A question then. What advice would you give to a pharmacist who's planning to transition into the GP surgery sector?
I would say look into what the role involves and start looking at how GP systems run, what kind of work you would be involved in, and just start looking at opportunities. Don't worry about what experience you've got, because whatever it is, it will be useful, and you just need to make sure that you open to learning and open to your own personal development, and be really, really brutally honest with yourself about what your knowledge gaps are. You know, if you can do the online assessment, that gives you a really, really good idea of where your learning needs are, and then just work on it. Give yourself, you know, a time limit as to when you're going to achieve all of the learning outcomes that you need. Be confident and ask questions. No question is a stupid question.
I think that's fantastic advice, Sundeep. You really hit a few key points, especially the fact about, you know, being open and willing to learn, and being honest about your learning gaps. So that's absolutely crucial. So yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. So Sundeep, you mentioned the self-assessment tool. What is that, and how can pharmacists access that?
So it's a really good tool to use. So if you go to pharmacistselfassessment.org.uk, you'll come across a set of questions. So answer those questions as honestly, err on the side of caution again. You know, if you really don't know something, just say you don't know it. Answer those questions brutally honest, and it will give you, at the end of it, it will give you an outline of what your training needs are. It will analyze your answers, and it will tell you in terms of the levels 1 to 4 that clinical pharmacist solutions use to assess what your competencies are. It will give you what you're good at, what you're not good at.
Sundeep, thank you again for joining us. It's been really interesting chatting to you. I'm sure there's lots of gems that some of the pharmacists who are listening can take away. And hopefully we'll have you back on here at some point in the future to see how you've progressed again.
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you so much.
This podcast was brought to you by Clinical Pharmacist Academy, supporting pharmacists to transition into the general practice sector and accelerate their career as a clinical pharmacist. For more information about our academy, visit cpaweb.org.uk.